Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nails and Beauty Talk. I am your host, Asia the Bird. To have a very special guest with us today, she is a multidisciplinary artist, and she is the creator of the ACRYLICS exhibition. Please welcome Isis Darks. Hello, Isis, and welcome.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. So I want to go ahead and really get started by asking where you're originally from and tell us a little about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Ohio. I have been in New York for 10 years, so I don't know if I can really be considered an Ohio girl anymore, but Ohio, good old blue collar is at the foundation and core of who I am. My upbringing, definitely, like I said, very much Ohio, very much a small town, in comparison to where I stay now,
Hmm.
which is in Brooklyn. The which is I think about the population is around 3 million.
Hmm.
Toledo, Ohio, where I'm from, is around like 300,000. So it was very small.
So I want to go ahead and really talk about your school experience. So tell us a little about your school experience. Like, what was that like in terms of grade school, college, and things of that nature?
Yeah, so school experience, and you said in terms of grade school and college, I would say my overall school experience was not ideal, honestly. Like me
Hmm.
growing up in Ohio, it's very much since it's so small, I think you're subjected to what a lot of small towns are subjected to, where it's kind of like one type of mindset, small town thinking. Um, and I think that as I progressed and got older, even into college, it was very much apparent that the way that I was, or just the things that I like to do, which is like be creative, or
Right.
the things that I was into, which was in fashion, um, those things weren't even necessarily available or apparent or
Hmm.
in when I was growing up. So that was one aspect. I think another aspect which contributed to my creativity, and then just my overall kind of like assimilation to society,
Right.
was just from grade school to even high school to even a little bit of experiences in college. I was subjected to like a crazy a crazy experience with bullying, and I
Mhm.
think that even though it's not necessarily the best experience, especially if I would dive into that, it actually shaped how my creative brain would work, because my
Right.
creativity kind of was like a defense mechanism. Like I would kind of like escapism. Like my
Right.
creativity was like I
Mhm.
go into my world and my space to kind of like tune out these things.
Yeah.
So those I mean, I feel like those are the things that are worth mentioning about my upbringing, because it really did kind of like later in years when you start to dive into your adult self of where these things come from. Yeah, that's what really shaped it.
Mhm. I wanna get into as far as role models. So who did you consider to be your role models growing up?
Yeah, so honestly, I never really consider anyone to be my role models growing up. Like, I
Mhm.
never had one person that I pinpoint, like, I want to be like this person or I love this. For me, I was very much influenced by, I would say, like concepts or industries or things like that. Like,
Right.
growing up, especially, I'm a millennial, so in the golden era of TV.
Yeah, me too. I'm a millennial too.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm a millennial too.
Yes, I don't care what anybody says, like, best era. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but with that, I used to really tap into all these TV shows like Project Runway. I love magazines. Everything was very tangible and
Mhm.
physical back then. So I would just like immerse into like fashion books, fashion designs, fashion these things. I was very much more of intrigued with fashion before I got into art years later. So
Mhm.
that yeah, that I would say that I was more so influenced by the industry of things. Like I would tap into Vogue. I would read Harper's Bazaar. I would read Elle magazines. I love Cosmopolitan. Like all these things were constantly influencing me. From whatever they wrote about month to month, I stayed in a bookstore, so so
Yeah.
it was kind of like I was influenced by things around me, things that I digest, things that I consumed, and there wasn't really like one person or influence.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so understandable. I wanna get into as far as, so you describe yourself as a multidisciplinary artist. So what drew your interest in art and fashion? Like, what are some of the things that you do as far as multidisciplinary?
Yeah, so I would say that my the launching of acrylics was my first like debut as an artist by myself, because previously my career, like I was working in marketing, I had been working in fashion, and I was producing these things for like for companies, and I never really considered myself an artist. Like even growing up, I was creative, I had ideas. I just thought I was a person who had ideas. Like I never really
Yeah.
associated that with art. And
Mhm.
then even the way that our art museum in Toledo was set up, like the art that I would be exposed to was like seeing stuff from the Renaissance era, and
Yeah.
like we'll see like the typical exhibition with mummies, and like that's what I
Mhm.
associated with art. I didn't know really until I moved to New York how creative and how just art can be whatever you define it. So
Mhm.
as I started to think about like I'm reeling myself out, I'm introducing myself to the world and thinking about what type of art that I do or what I like, I just felt like it couldn't really be confined because
Mhm.
even with acrylics alone, I had designed the exhibition, but
Mhm.
then directed and developed the book. I had to write the book, not because I wanted to, but it ended up leading to those things. So it really
Right.
kind of like took all these accumulation of skills that I had over the years and applied it to that. And I just felt like it really couldn't be defined. It was just like multidisciplinary. So that is how I came to that conclusion. And then
Mhm.
what was the second part of your question in terms of art and fashion you said related to that?
So as far as, like, just what drew your interest, like, what were some things that you did as far as, like, art and fashion?
Yeah. Okay. So with fashion, I will say I stepped out of fashion officially in terms of me contributing to that industry,
Mhm.
probably around 2019. Like I was working at a
Okay.
fashion startup, and then I went
Okay.
to be overseeing marketing at JFK. And so
Okay.
there I was really able to flourish and kind of like develop like launching these exhibitions. I mean these pop-ups, which led to the exhibition art later.
Okay.
So that's when I really got to kind of like develop those skills that would be needed to produce some of these things that I applied the art to.
Mhm.
In terms of fashion, fashion never left my core being. Like I love to get dressed. I love like statement things. Like it's just me. Like I'm a fashion girl, but I'm just not in fashion right now, I would say.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, totally understandable. I wanna get into as far as your fashion style. So how would you describe your fashion style?
I would define it just as I define myself being multidisciplinary. Like it's just unbound. Just
Mhm.
because, one month, whoever, I could wake up and I'm like, I like this. Or, maybe I'm more just I'm feeling black, maybe I'm feeling red, maybe I'm feeling this. And
Yeah.
I just like to I think it could be defined like I like statement pieces in terms of jackets. I love timeless things.
Mhm.
Because like we're really in the era of trends. Like
Mhm.
the runway and fashion has always been trends, but I think with fast fashion now in the last several years, um, it's very fast, and so things are
Yeah.
changing. And for me, I like to go back to that core of like selecting items that can last throughout the seasons and
Yeah.
last throughout the trends.
Mhm. Yeah, and what's very, very interesting is that, the thing with fast fashion, and it is very fast, the problem with that, it pollutes the environment and it damages the environment. And the thing is that I like how where people, certain brands like, Hermes or like some other other boutiques are concentrating about exclusivity and doing high quality, good quality products. And the thing is that, when you build a good product, it'll last you long, like years through time, like 20, 30, 40 years. So
Hmm.
I definitely think that's very, very important, because certain fashion pieces that you acquire, that can be passed down like from generation, generation to generation, generation.
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely that's very, very important, especially in fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like even that conversation with fast fashion versus like quality pieces is so intricate because
Hmm.
um it's so intricate because I actually think that it brings attention to not classism, but just the economic factors that actually drive fast fashion. So like
Yeah.
this is where my industry hat comes in when I was like a fashion analyst prior to when I went to JFK. But with fast fashion, I think a lot of people are upset of what it does to the environment, and naturally so. But then there's a conversation that needs to be had about the consumer of fast fashion. Like they can't afford, not everyone who's buying fast fashion can afford to get sustainable pieces. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And I just
True.
think that you have to think about the customer of fast fashion. And that's where like I feel passionately, we all want to sustain our environment, and we all want to be in this environment where we can love our earth and live. But then it's like,
Hmm.
what is the solution instead of like bashing the fast fashion companies? What is the solution for fast fashion to be able to provide affordable items for their customer who are buying at that price point. And so I think,
Mhm.
to me, that's my opinion on it.
Mhm. And I think that's why people say, you can do thrifting, when you go to certain thrift store, you can find like, denim jackets, jeans and stuff like that, and you can style it and things like that, like vintage pieces,
Hmm.
that have been, worn like years ago and things of that nature. There was like this thrifting store I would go when I was in art school. It's called Civies, and they had like vintage clothes and things like that, so I would, try to do thrifting and things of that nature. So those things I think would help fast fashion,
Hmm.
but I think you made a very good point because not everybody can afford, $5,000, purse that's high quality or like a coat that's high quality and stuff like that. And so it's just like people are going to places where they can afford, those things, but it's at like not only at like the cheaper price, but also it's cheaper quality. And then with
Hmm.
cheaper quality, it doesn't last very long. So that's the thing.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So most definitely. So I want to go ahead and really talk about as far as fashion designers. Like who are like your favorite fashion designers?
Man, I don't even have any. Like, I am really a girl who, like, if I go, I love to pull inspiration on Pinterest. I love, if I have the time, because I haven't had time in months, but when I would have time, I would spend just a little bit like digging on explore pages. I think prior to like social media really coming to what it is now, I used to spend time, like, I don't know if you remember Polyboard, like that
Yeah, I think
website.
so. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes, like you could actually search for like clothing in there. So I've
Hmm.
always been a girl that likes to discover. So
Hmm.
I can't really pinpoint certain designers as my favorite or that I like. Like there could be so many that I pull inspiration from, just even from Fashion Week that came up, and I was seeing designers that I had never heard of before. And so
Hmm.
for me, it's just constantly like I'm just exploring and pulling so much. I can't even pinpoint names. Like I would have to go and look and be like, all right, I'll write this down and send you this list because
Right.
yeah. So I utilize archives, I utilize Pinterest, and I just am constantly saving, and then I'll go back and revisit when I need to pull some inspiration.
I want to talk more about the exhibition called Acrylics. So it has started February 10th and it ends on March 10th. So the exhibition will be highlighting creative nail artists and their process behind their work. So tell us more about the exhibition.
Yeah, so the exhibition is the surreal interpretation of the manicure experience. So when you go in, you're like entering into this super red room. It's like all red, and the hands are protruding from the wall like this, like surrealism.
Hmm.
And surrealism is what is an angle that I want to take with my art. Like I think in the future, even when it comes to like a future exhibition with acrylics or just anything I produce in the future, it'll be a lot to do with optical illusions or surrealism. So this was the first version of that.
Hmm.
And then it was still a curated show. So with those hands coming out of the walls, each row displays the work of a nail artist. And there were
Hmm.
10 nail artists total. And then there was one feature with Greg Una, and he had like embedded one of his jewels into the nails.
Hmm.
And he worked hand in hand with the artist named Rachel Goatley. So she's not particularly featured in the book in terms of telling her story, but they do have some great imagery in the book that's accompanying the exhibition. So yeah, and I think that would describe it in a nutshell. It's like when you walk into this all red room, you're like going to your nail appointment. You can sit down, you can take photos. There's a desk where it's like this setup. Put your hands in, draw your nails. There's a wall where you can choose your color. Obviously, the color is red. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just supposed to be an immersive experience for nail lovers.
Mm. Yeah, that's really, really cool. Now, who are some of the nail artists that are in the exhibition?
Yeah, we have some great artists. Finesse Your Claws.
Hmm.
Her name is Melissa Samuel. We have Sky Somalia, Alexis Auer, Leslie. I can't pronounce her last name, Aranaga, which is Leslie Didham. Who else? Asia Walton, Ajak Danny. We have a artist from Tokyo. Her name is Momoka Takahashi. Um,
Mm.
she's great, and I absolutely love. I love her spread in the book. It's really fun. Who else do we have? We have a really young artist. Her name's Marble
Mhm.
Valdez, sorry. And on Instagram, her social is I Be Doing Nails.
Mhm.
And who else do we have? Trying to think of the names. Did I cover everyone? Stephanie Ko, which is Studio Ayoko on Instagram. And then I think that pretty much covers it. If I did miss someone, I apologize. There's 10 of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to get into as far as also for the exhibition. You did mention that you have a book as well that goes along with the exhibition. So, what do you want the viewers to take away from not only the exhibition but also the book as well when they get the book?
Yeah, from the exhibition, I want people to be inspired. Like, I really want people to take in the work of the nail artist and understand that nail art is more than just like a beauty accent. It's really intricate, it's sculptural, and that's what all of the artists have displayed. Like, they've displayed this sculptural art. And that was
Mhm.
supposed to be the gist of the exhibition, to just showcase like this hidden sculptural art that maybe society doesn't acknowledge, but
Mhm.
nail art is a really robust industry. So
Mhm.
that was one. And then for the book really brings readers and people who attended the exhibition into the stories of the artists. So all of
Mhm.
the nail art that was displayed in the exhibition was shot and featured in the book.
Mhm.
And then each of those sets actually have a backstory. And the way that I
Mm.
have written the book, I interviewed all of the artists. And then from their interviews, we pulled these like creative and visual angles. So we pulled these creative and visual angles to like bring their stories to life based off of their interviews, and then they created these sets based off of their interviews and based off of these angles. So it's
Mm.
really like an immersive 360, like bringing it to life. And in the exhibition, you're hearing the stories in the overhead, you're seeing the nails, and yeah, like
Mhm.
I just wanted to bring life to this art form. I'm a storyteller, I guess, so
Yeah.
that's where we are.
Mm. I want to get into as far as this next question. So, Black culture, especially Black American culture, has made such an impact around the world, ranging from fashion trends to beauty and nail trends. In your perspective, talk about the significance of Black culture's impact on the beauty and fashion industry. In your perspective,
Yeah. I think that, especially from an American and Western lens, Black people's influence on fashion, and you said beauty, correct?
yes.
Fashion and beauty. I think that Black creativity and things that are innate to Black culture, to me, has been the foundation of a lot of trends and things that you see in fashion, and things that have grown to these conglomerate um either genres,
Hmm.
industries. Like when you think about K-pop, sorry, K-pop.
Hmm.
When I look even at, sometimes I'll see things from Asian cultures and things that they're doing with their hair, where it's like these things stem from um just the like I said, things that are innate to Black culture. Like it's
Right.
just us, like it's us
Yeah.
being us. And as a Black American, because even being Black, like there's so
Yeah.
many different, it's nuanced, because you can meet someone who's quote unquote Black, and they
Hmm.
could be from the Caribbean and they have a Caribbean American experience, or they can be from overseas, like the UK experience is different. And so when you talk about just specifically the Black American experience, that's what had even brought me into wanting to tell this story about acrylic nails. Because at first, when I was thinking about the concept and wanting to do something next, after leaving JFK, I wanted to highlight and reposition what society thought about some of these things that stem from Black Americans, but they're
Hmm.
repackaged, and I don't know, like repackaged and made more digestible for the mass consumer, and we
Right.
whoever that mass consumer might be.
Hmm.
So that's what kind of led me to wanting to tell the story about acrylics, because of, I felt like there had to be a need for someone to tell the story of how Black people influence culture, whether it's fashion or beauty, and specifically from nails. And so that's
Right.
that's how I feel about Black people's influence. I just think that we are truly creatives, and I think
Yeah.
that in society, like I and not to take away from any other culture, because other cultures have their creativity in their own right, which is so cool.
Yeah.
But it just seems like from my perspective, the respect of for black people and the acknowledgement for black people for what they contribute to culture in general is never given. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like, why? You know, like it's like people like it, people like what we do when we even talk about streetwear culture, or even when we talk about streetwear culture, people like it when they can package it for themselves, but
Right.
then it's not ever not like it's always deemed, when it was at its prime in black culture, it's deemed ghetto, thugs, it's deemed all these things, but then
Yeah.
it's like,
Hood.
yes, and it's
Mhm.
like it's honestly is enraging to me on the inside just as a black person, because I'm just like,
Mhm.
you you would read about these things, but then once you start to actually experience them, I think like even in the workplace, like where you can be creative, but just like this, you can do this, but only in this box. You can be like, they want you to be like this, but it's only right here. And I think that that's what's been applied to black culture in general for centuries. Honestly, it's like we're not intentionally maybe used, but it's like we're observed and maybe kind of like not belittled but observed, and I would say oppressed to be like
Mhm.
this, but we're just being ourselves. And so that's
Mhm.
just my take on it. I definitely do feel like black culture has influenced a lot of that beauty and fashion trends, things
Mhm.
that have been profited on and made millions on. Is black people have definitely given the foundations for a lot of things that we see today to come to fruition. And I
Right.
think that that's great. I just think that the acknowledgement and the opportunity should be allotted to black people in those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely, most definitely. And the thing is, not only that we're studied, I think we're also, I think the oppression comes with it because it goes with the lack of credibility as far as us in terms of fashion, as far as the nail industry. I recently made a video, and Nail Pro magazine reposted it. Nail Pro is one of the top nail magazines in the world, and they reposted what I said about Black women's contribution in the nail industry, where we've set the tone for bling nails, and we made red nails popular, gold nails, the curved nails, the long nails, the different designs. Before anyone else jumped on it, we was the first to make these trendy. You look at people like Missy Elliott, FloJo. You got Shakari Richardson wearing her nails on the track. So
Hmm.
we're the ones who have set the tone as far as the nail industry, especially in fashion too.
Hmm.
You look at black designers like Zelda Wynn Valdez or like Fanny Chris. These are the people that was in the 20th century. They were creating, iconic garments for, high end, you know, um, white people that were like in the higher class. And when you look at Anne Lowe, she created the dress for Jackie Kennedy, the wedding dress. So, with Anne Lowe, she's not given enough of her credit. You got designers
Hmm.
like Patrick Kelly, who's an iconic fashion designer. Like his stuff is very, very fun and colorful. He played a lot with texture, and he was haute couture, but he also told a story about about the black experience. And he's, he was a designer from Mississippi, a small town in Mississippi, and he got big as a designer in Paris.
Hmm.
So the thing is that there is an oppressive aspect to it where we're not given as much of the credit, and people want the aesthetic of Black American culture, or Black culture in general, but don't really care as much about how we took these things from the lack of resources and made it popular.
Yes, honestly, like I was going to say that about the lack of resources. I think that there's something to be said about black people, black culture, and even in the situation that I was in with launching acrylics, like you're doing these things and you're creating these things with lack of resources. Like even when we think about like the big hoop earrings, when we think about colored hair, when we
Hmm.
think about the hair store and like
Right.
it where it stays, and where it lies in black communities, where I stay at right now, in the neighborhood that I stay at, there's not even a hair store like 20 minutes away from me. And
Right.
so that lets me know like the hair store, these things that are native to black culture, those are embedded into our communities. So when you start to think about like, okay, it brings up a conversation of like the economic disparity in black culture, because a lot of these things stemmed from an environment that was lack of that was lack of economic resources. So when you think
Mm-hmm.
about like streetwear, when you think about like just even like gangster rap or just like baggy clothing, like when you think about, if we break down again the economic influences of that, those things would not have been coming for a more middle, like they would not have come into fruition in a middle class environment for a black household, I would say. Like those
Right.
things really came from like gutter environments. And so I think that as a black person, it's more dear to me these stories, because as a black person, it's kind of like you will only get it. Like you
Yeah.
will only understand why this girl has those long nails. Some of those things are innate, and I thought that that
Right.
was real valuable about some of the stories that we told in acrylics, because we asked the artists some of the same all the same questions, but we asked them to go into their backgrounds, to talk about their first introduction to nail art. And
Yeah.
what was consistent, at least for a lot of some of the black American artists, some of those things, they grew up in households where their aunts and mothers were hairstylists or worked in
Mm-hmm.
cosmetology. And so even that industry, and even just growing up with that, again, some of those things are innate to us. We're just being ourselves. But
Right.
some of those things do come out of, like I said, these economic factors where people want to call it ghetto, or people want to say it is what it is, but no matter what, you have to give it context. Like,
Yeah.
that's how I feel. That's how I feel about it. It's like lack of resources. I really felt passionately about telling that story, the story of acrylics, and I wanted to, even what comes in the future, who knows, but I do want to tell those black stories to reposition the lens of how you're digesting it, and to give
Right.
that acknowledgement, but also to inspire black people to understand and have pride in the things that not necessarily come from them, because the story of nails is very intricate, but the things that they have influenced to what we see today, to know that, like,
Right.
yeah, being black is lit. Like,
Yeah.
look at all the things that we've done in history, and that's not, those stories aren't even told unless you dig for them. They're not public and mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is also too, the thing is mostly Asians, majority Asians own beauty supply stores and nail supply stores. And the thing is that I'm glad that there are black people that are starting to own like nail supply and beauty supply stores, because it's so oversaturated with ownership in regards to Asians owning all these stores, and I've seen certain cases where black women have been mistreated in beauty supply stores and things like
Yeah.
that. And I know that we're very, very giving as far as our culture, but I think it has to be gate kept for to a great extent. You know what I mean? So we can maintain the history and maintain just our culture in a general scale. So I'm glad that people are getting more into ownership of owning businesses, and especially taking ownership of their music and things of that nature. So ownership is very, very important to maintain and gatekeep the culture.
Yeah, and I think that um I think like what was tricky for me, in terms of like, okay, do we gatekeep black culture, or is it something that can it be gate kept? Like,
Mm.
because there's such a disparity gap. Like, we're black people, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, like we're playing catch up in some shape or form. Either
Yeah.
you're generations behind, either you're one generation behind. If you are the person who has made it in your family to be more successful, you still have people in your family you have to bring up with you. So when it comes to even gatekeeping to get to the point of ownership,
Right.
there's a lot of like ignorance, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding the resources available to even get to that point of ownership. And if you do, you really become like an outlier in the black community.
Right.
So like, it's even getting to that point of ownership is so difficult. So it's kind of
Mhm.
like, how can you really gatekeep something that people, it's kind of like Africa, where it's like,
Yeah.
in Africa, obviously there are places in Africa that are thriving despite these narratives that have been pushed to the Western culture. Like, Africa
Right.
is beautiful, there are wealthy Africans, there are people in different, African is not just Africa, it's like there's so
Right.
many different countries within Africa that have their own ways and customs, and so much knowledge and history. But we can collectively say that these outside cultures have come into this place and this resource
Mhm.
and taken from it, and then take from it, and they build exponentially, while you're left with the source just kind of like not having a source. And I think that that's where we're at, even with trying to get to that point of ownership. Like this
Hmm.
has been decades of um Asian store owners and nail shop owners, and their story is really significant, like even how that came to play. And that's why I think, at least for myself, when I'm telling these stories, I
Hmm.
like to tell them as black, or I like to tell them as what they are. Like, let's learn more of this intricate relationship between the black creator and the Asian facilitator, in terms of the nail shop, or even in the beauty store. And
Hmm.
I do think that, there's that intricate storytelling of the cohesiveness of it, but then there's that ugly side of it where you do have to address it and ask those questions, like, why is it that these cultures, other cultures, not just Asian cultures, but other cultures, can come into the black community, utilize them for what they see in terms of seeing their value when it comes to the dollar, seeing their value in terms of seeing how, like, they can drive revenue for you, but then don't treat them with respect, like you said. Like, we've seen videos where, even in locally, where there were Asian owned shops, nail shops, and they're like hitting black women with the brooms because of disagreements. I think we've
Hmm.
all been subjected to going into a hair store where they follow you aisle by aisle to make
Yeah.
sure you're not stealing. And the thing about it, like, again, you have to acknowledge, call a spade a spade. Sometimes people do steal, so it's like, we understand
Right.
that stealing happens, but it still is just like, why are you being treated as a criminal in a place that is in my community, in a place that you're benefiting from my dollar? So it's like, even that, it's like, people come into the community and don't treat us with respect, but then want our money. So it's like, you do respect it in some shape or way or form. So that's why I feel an
Hmm.
obligation to tell the story of Black Ann, but then also to call out those things
Hmm.
that we see.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I want to get into as far as business. So for Black creatives, what advice would you give for someone who is starting their own business? How should they promote and market themselves to the masses?
Yes. So, well, for someone who's creating and starting their own business, first things first, I would rewind it back before you get to promoting and putting yourself out there. I would say, like, really creating that business plan. What is your plan of action? And really getting technical, doing your due diligence as a creative to understand the business part of everything. Because I
Right.
think, as a creative, you can create and have an idea all day. Like,
Yeah.
we can have ideas for days, we can
Hmm.
dream about it, but then when it starts to come to the execution, and when we think about execution with longevity, like past launch, that
Right.
actually needs to have a plan. And I've learned the hard way, so that's why I'm giving that
Hmm. Yeah.
advice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've learned the hard way of just launching things, and at least I was blessed to be able to launch. But then post launch, you're like, I ran out of money, or post launch, you're like, I wasn't
Hmm.
prepared to promote myself after the launch. So first things first, I think creating that plan of action, understanding before you even get to launch, like, what is it going to take to launch? Like, how much does it actually cost for you to launch this idea as a creative?
Right.
What is the cost after to promote yourself? Are you building a budget? And then I think also being patient with yourself. If there's something that you want to launch and there's something that you want to get off the ground, really take time to create that plan, to understand what it's going to take before you get yourself into it, because
Right.
that will kind of help along the way with those headaches. And then you might
Yeah.
be able to see, like, actually, this project, I thought I could just do it. It's going to cost me $15,000, so maybe I can work on it in increments and I can launch it a year from now.
Hmm.
So yeah, like, I just think it's about patience, it's about planning, really focusing on the execution and what it's going to take to execute. Do you need a team? Are you
Hmm.
What are things that you can do to delegate? I think that that's really great. And again, just kind of like taking the time to build your business acumen so that you can
Right.
match it with that creativity.
Absolutely, most definitely. Now, how do you juggle being a Black creative with life and mental health?
Yeah. What a question. I actually feel like I just figured out how recently, because it was a learning lesson for me. I just think that I entered into a new stage of life that I had
Hmm.
never experienced before, and then that forced me to actually figure out how to juggle creativity, being black, as it affects your I think being black as it affects me in the workplace, and then juggling all of that with my mental health. For
Hmm.
me, even when it came down to launching acrylics, at the time I was working for American Express when I started the journey.
Mm,
Um, and I ended up being subjected to a really hostile work environment. It didn't
mm,
start off that way, but there was like some change in leadership, and it just really it impacted me so bad that I outside of
mm,
work I wasn't able to create. I'm a mom of two.
mm,
Like you really have to split your time into these things, and even when it came
right.
to acrylics, I was pushing it along because I had hired like a project manager. Um,
Mm.
within my little budget. So I was like, I'm gonna push it around, but I couldn't really show up for the project like I needed to during the times because I was so depleted mentally. So what I did to kind of get me out of that, fortunately, I was able to tap into therapy because I had those benefits through my job. I think having therapy, whether someone is open to it or not, whether they've done it or not, I think that every Black creative should tap into some type of counseling, some type of therapy,
Mhm.
to just in life, like outside of creatives, we're people,
Right.
like,
Mm,
and those
absolutely.
things, I don't think sometimes you might not realize it, but your inner being, your mental, it affects your, it impacts your creativity. So doing what you have to do to get your mind clear, whether that's therapy, whether that's releasing, whether that's yoga, whether whatever it is, I think you have to prioritize your mental clarity because you can't do anything if you're not clear in your mind.
Right.
Um, so that's what I did for me. Exercising. I like to exercise. I like to start off my day with exercise because again, it gives me mental clarity.
Mhm.
I was diving myself more into my faith because that was giving me a lot of mental clarity to navigate some of the challenges that were coming with launching a project,
Right. Mm,
and yeah, that's really it for me. I just think that whatever, and it's not definitive for the next person, but for me, it was prioritizing just what I needed to do to get my mental clear. And for me, that was therapy, that was
mhm.
exercising. Even creating is therapeutic for me in some way or shape or form. So I think that people should just find what works for them, but make sure you're prioritizing. Like, do I have mental clarity right now? And if you don't,
Right.
what do you need to do to get there? Because then everything else will follow in terms of like your creativity, how you can create, and what comes from it.
Yeah, absolutely, and also health is wealth as well. Because what I found out as of recently, like the reason for like high cholesterol and things like that, like in terms of heart disease, is because of stress, and especially how you manage stress is very, very important. So even with me now, like I'm trying to drink more water. Have more vegetables, like do like a fruit, vegetable salad and things like that. So definitely, diet makes a huge difference as far as how you manage stress and mental health. That plays a part into it as well.
Absolutely. And I think that, working out isn't for everybody, but I do feel like exercise is for everyone, whether they want to do it or not.
Right.
Because once you start to exercise, your body actually will command those healthier things. I need water. I need vegetables. I need
Right.
to, so it kind of
Yeah.
goes hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah, right, absolutely, most definitely. Now, where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
I don't know, honestly. Like, honestly, 10 years from now. So, I really, when I was growing up, I don't even mention that early in, I don't know why I did it, but when I was growing up, I used to compose music. I played instruments.
Mm,
And I really, even with this, like, I was incorporating music into the acrylics project.
mhm,
Um, there should still be some of that to roll out in
right,
the next, like, few weeks. But I think that I really just want to expand and grow my creative projects. I don't know where I will be in 10 years, but I know that I want to be more established as an artist, obviously.
right,
I want to be more established with the things that I want to do in terms of like mixing, producing,
mhm,
just creating. And that's why I didn't really want to be defined because I just think that I would consider myself a multidisciplinary artist, a creative director,
mhm,
um, like a composer, musician. So it's just so many things
yeah,
that I just want to tap into and evolve. And I just think that 10 years from now, people will just finally start to see this collection of things that I've come out with.
right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Last but not least, where can people find you on social media, and how can also people, get into the exhibition, also buy the acrylics book and things of that nature?
Absolutely. So on social media, you can find me at Ice Cold Vision. You can follow Acrylics Worldwide for more updates on the exhibition. In that on that social handle, you'll be able to see the address of where the exhibition is, and then in the next day or two, we'll be dropping the link to the pre-order for the book, and the book is on pre-order for the duration of the exhibition.
All right.
So yeah, and it will drop, be official to the public, I believe, April 1st.
All right, that's really amazing. Well, thank you so much, Isis, for this wonderful conversation. I really appreciate what you're doing as far as doing the exhibition, the Chris exhibition, and really telling the story about, just with nails, and showcasing different people's styles of, nail art and creativity. So I really appreciate this conversation. And also shout out to Alex Fox, who is the creative director of Nail Olympia Competition for, setting this up and putting us together. So I want to give a big shout out to her before we leave. So definitely, I look forward to pre-ordering the book and just thank you so much again.
Yes, no problem. And to Alex Fox, she wrote our books forward, so she is also an integral part in the book, and I appreciate her so much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also, follow me on my social media platforms and be on the lookout for more interviews to come very soon. Take care, stay healthy, and stay beautiful. Bye bye.